Imagine that you have been given a second chance. Not a second chance to make more money. Not a second chance to become successful, but a second chance to save your soul. Imagine standing at the very bottom of hell, a place where hope has long since disappeared. A place where every selfish choice, every cruel act, and every moment of greed follows you into eternity. Most people would believe there is no escape from such a place. Most people would believe that once judgment has been passed, the story is over. But what if they were wrong? What if, after a lifetime of mistakes, one small act of kindness was enough to open a door? Not because it erased the past, not because it made a bad person good, but because even the smallest spark of compassion can leave a mark that survives long after everything else is forgotten. This is the story of a man named Kandata, a thief, a criminal, a man who spent most of his life thinking only of himself. When his life ended, he found himself exactly where he deserved to be. Yet somewhere far above him, in a realm of peace and light, someone remembered a single moment from his past, a moment so small that Kandata himself had forgotten it. Because of that moment, a path would be offered to him, a path stretching from the depths of hell toward the gates of heaven, a path no wider than a spider's thread. What happened next should have been a miracle. Instead, it became a lesson about fear, about selfishness, and about how easily people can destroy the very thing they have been given. More than 100 years after it was written, this story continues to speak to readers around the world because its question is timeless. When salvation is finally within reach, can we hold on to it? Or are we defeated by the very flaws that put us in danger in the first place? This is The Spider's Thread by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Chapter 1. Paradise above, hell below. Far beyond the world of the living, beyond the reach of clouds, mountains, and time itself, there existed a place of perfect peace. At the heart of this realm lay a vast lotus pond. Its waters were clear and still, reflecting a golden light that never faded. White lotus flowers floated across the surface, their petals untouched by age or decay. A gentle fragrance drifted through the air, and the only sound was the occasional ripple of water stirred by a passing breeze. It was a place without fear, without suffering, without regret. Along the edge of the pond walked the Buddha. His steps were calm and unhurried. He moved in silence, surrounded by the endless beauty of paradise. Nothing demanded his attention, yet he observed everything. As he passed among the blooming lotus flowers, he paused and looked down into the water. The surface shimmered. Gradually, the reflection changed. The clear water became a window into another realm, a place so different from paradise that it seemed impossible the two could exist within the same universe. Far below lay hell. Darkness covered everything. The warm light of paradise could not reach it. The air seemed heavy and lifeless. Jagged rocks stretched across barren ground, and distant fires cast a faint red glow through the shadows. The cries of countless souls echoed through the darkness, blending together into a sorrowful chorus that never truly ended. Some souls wandered without purpose. Some struggled beneath invisible burdens. Others sat in silence, long past the point of tears. Each had arrived there by a different path, yet all shared the same fate. Among those souls, one figure caught the Buddha's attention. His name was Kandata. He stood among the condemned, surrounded by the consequences of his own life. Unlike many who had fallen into misfortune through moments of weakness or desperation, Kandata's story was different. He had spent much of his life choosing himself over everyone else. As a young man, he had discovered that stealing was easier than working. Taking was easier than earning. Threatening was easier than understanding. At first, his crimes had been small. A stolen coin, a missing purse, a lie told for personal gain. But habits have a way of growing. The more Kandata succeeded, the less he cared about who suffered because of him. Over the years, his greed deepened. What began as theft became robbery. What began as dishonesty became cruelty. If someone stood between him and what he wanted, he pushed them aside. If another person suffered because of his actions, he rarely gave it a second thought. To Kandata, life was simple. Either you took what you wanted, or someone else took it first. Compassion seemed like weakness. Mercy seemed like a luxury. And concern for others felt unnecessary. For a time, that way of thinking appeared to serve him well. He gained money. He gained influence. He gained the reputation of a man best avoided. Many feared him. Few trusted him. But fear can be mistaken for power, and temporary success can be mistaken for victory. Kandata spent so many years outrunning the consequences of his actions that he began to believe they would never catch him. Then, one day, his life ended. Like everyone else, he discovered that there are some things no one can escape. No amount of wealth could protect him. No amount of cunning could save him. When judgment came, he stood alone with the choices he had made. And those choices brought him here. Now, in the darkness of hell, everything he had once valued was gone. His money was gone. His reputation was gone. His power was gone. Only memory remained. At first, Kandata had blamed others for his fate. He blamed bad luck. He blamed enemies. He blamed circumstances. Anyone but himself. Yet over time, those excuses became harder to believe. Deep down, he knew the truth. Every decision that had led him here had been his own. No one had forced him to become the man he became. He had chosen his path, one step at a time. And now he was living with the result. Still, one thing remained alive within him: hope. It was small, faint, almost extinguished, but it remained. Like many souls in hell, Kandata secretly dreamed of escape. He dreamed of freedom, of light, of another chance. Not because he had become a better man, not because he suddenly understood the value of kindness, but because suffering is difficult for anyone to endure forever. The Buddha watched him quietly. Among the countless souls below, Kandata was not the worst, nor was he the best. He was simply a man who had spent most of his life serving himself. Yet as the Buddha observed him, an old memory surfaced. A memory from long ago. A single moment hidden among years of selfishness. A moment so small that Kandata himself had long forgotten it. Yet sometimes, a single choice can carry more weight than anyone realizes. And because of that forgotten moment, everything was about to change. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Act of Mercy. The memory came from many years earlier, when Kandata was still alive. Long before judgment, long before hell, back when he still walked the roads of the world like any other man. It had been late afternoon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across a forest path. Warm light filtered through the branches overhead, painting the ground in shifting patterns of gold and green. The air was quiet, except for the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds preparing for evening. Kandata was traveling alone. That was nothing unusual. He preferred solitude. Other people were useful when they served a purpose, but otherwise they were often a nuisance. Alone, he could move quickly, think clearly, and avoid unnecessary complications. As he walked, his attention drifted from one thought to another. He was considering where he might find his next opportunity. A wealthy merchant, perhaps. A careless traveler. Someone carrying more than they could protect. Such thoughts occupied his mind more often than not. Then something moved near his feet. Kandata looked down. A tiny spider was crossing the path. It moved slowly over the uneven ground, navigating pebbles, twigs, and fallen leaves that must have seemed enormous from its perspective. He stopped. For a moment, he simply watched it. The spider continued on its way, unaware of the danger standing above it. A faint smile appeared on Kandata's face. Without thinking, he raised one foot. Crushing the creature would have required no effort at all. One step. That was all. The spider would be gone. No one would notice. No one would care. In truth, Kandata himself had no particular reason to kill it. But neither did he need a reason. Destroying something weaker than himself was an action that demanded little thought. His foot hovered in the air. The spider continued crawling forward. Then, unexpectedly, a thought entered his mind. It was a simple thought, a brief one, the sort of thought that appears for only a moment before disappearing again. The spider was alive. Small and fragile, certainly, but alive. It wanted to continue living. It struggled to survive just as every living thing struggled to survive, including him. Kandata frowned slightly. The idea felt strange. He was not accustomed to considering the feelings of others, let alone those of a tiny creature. Yet something prevented him from bringing his foot down. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was pity. Perhaps it was simply a passing mood that happened to catch him at the right moment. Whatever the reason, he slowly lowered his foot beside the spider rather than on top of it. The tiny creature paused for a second, then continued on its journey. Within moments, it disappeared among the leaves. There, Kandata muttered to himself, consider yourself lucky. Then he continued walking. By the time the sun had set, he had forgotten the incident entirely. His life went on exactly as before. He stole when it benefited him. He lied when it was convenient. He took what he wanted and rarely concerned himself with the consequences. The small act of mercy changed nothing about the course of his life, or so it seemed. Years passed. Then came judgment. Then came hell. And still Kandata never once thought about the spider. But the Buddha remembered. Standing beside the lotus pond, he recalled that brief moment clearly. Not because it had transformed Kandata into a good man. It hadn't. Not because it erased the harm he had caused. It didn't. The act mattered for a different reason. For one brief instant, Kandata had possessed the power to destroy a life, and he had chosen not to. The choice had been small, yet it had been real. In a life filled with selfish decisions, it stood alone as a moment of mercy. The Buddha looked once more into the depths of hell. Far below, Kandata sat among the condemned. His shoulders were heavy with exhaustion. His face reflected years of suffering. Like countless others around him, he had long ago stopped expecting anything to change. And yet, hidden beneath the despair, there remained a faint desire for freedom, a wish for another chance, a hope he hardly dared acknowledge. The Buddha remained silent for a moment. Then his gaze shifted toward a lotus blossom growing beside the pond. Resting upon one of its broad leaves was a small spider. Its delicate thread caught the golden light, shining like a strand of silver. Carefully, the Buddha reached toward it. The spider remained perfectly still. With gentle fingers, he took hold of a single strand of silk. The thread was impossibly fine. To an ordinary eye, it might have seemed too fragile to support even the weight of an insect. Yet appearances can be deceiving. Holding the thread, the Buddha stepped closer to the edge of the pond. Below him stretched an immeasurable distance. Paradise above, hell below. Two realms separated by more than space, separated by the lives people chose to live. Without a word, the Buddha lowered the thread. Down it descended, past the white clouds, past the mountains and rivers of the world, past the lands of the living, farther and farther into darkness. The silver strand continued downward until it reached the depths of hell itself. There it hung, a single shining line connecting suffering to salvation. Meanwhile, Kandata sat alone in the shadows. Another day had passed. Another day of punishment. Another day of wondering whether time itself had forgotten him. Then something caught his eye, a faint glimmer above. At first, he ignored it. Hell was full of strange sights. Most of them led only to disappointment. But the light remained. Slowly, it grew brighter, descending through the darkness. Closer, closer, until finally a single silver thread hung directly before him. Kandata stared. The strand glowed softly against the shadows around him. Beautiful, delicate, impossible. His heart began to beat faster. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope. And as he looked upward into the darkness beyond the thread, a question formed in his mind. Could this be a way out? For a long moment, he did nothing. Then, unable to resist the possibility any longer, he reached toward the thread with trembling hands. Chapter 3. The Climb Toward Salvation. Kandata's hand trembled as he reached for the thread. For a moment, he hesitated. The shining strand seemed too delicate to be real, too fragile to support even a small weight, let alone carry a soul out of hell. Part of him expected his fingers to pass straight through it. Another part feared it would vanish the moment he touched it. But the possibility of escape was stronger than his doubts. Slowly, he wrapped his fingers around the thread. It was real, smooth and cool beneath his touch. More importantly, it was strong. Stronger than it looked. A spark of excitement surged through him. His heart pounded against his chest. For years, perhaps longer than he could remember, he had lived without hope. Now hope hung directly before him. A path, a chance, a way out. Without wasting another second, Kandata gripped the thread with both hands and began to climb. At first, the movement felt awkward. His muscles protested immediately. Life in hell had offered endless suffering, but little opportunity for effort of this kind. Yet desperation gave him strength. Hand over hand, he pulled himself upward. The darkness below began to fall away, slowly at first, then steadily. The ground where he had spent countless years suffering grew smaller beneath him. The sounds of hell faded as he climbed. The cries of the damned became distant echoes. The red glow of faraway fires dimmed. For the first time since his arrival, Kandata felt something remarkable. Relief. Every movement carried him farther from the place he hated most. Every movement brought him closer to freedom. The thought filled him with energy. He climbed faster. His hands moved with growing confidence. Soon he found himself smiling. The expression felt unfamiliar. He could not remember the last time he had smiled without bitterness. "I might actually escape," he whispered. The words sounded absurd, yet they were true. He was escaping. The realization made his heart soar. As the climb continued, Kandata began imagining what waited above. Light, fresh air, peace, perhaps even forgiveness. He had no idea what paradise truly looked like, but it hardly mattered. Anything would be better than hell. Anything. The darkness around him gradually softened. Far above, he thought he could see the faintest trace of golden light. At first, it appeared no larger than a distant star. Yet with every passing moment, it grew brighter. The sight filled him with determination. He fixed his eyes on that tiny glow and continued upward. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Time felt strange between heaven and hell. The climb seemed endless, yet the light remained. Always a little closer, always just beyond reach. Eventually, exhaustion forced him to stop. His arms burned. His shoulders ached. Every breath felt heavy. Carefully, he wrapped one arm around the thread and allowed himself a moment to rest. For several seconds, he simply hung there, breathing hard. Then curiosity got the better of him. He looked down. The sight stole his breath. Hell had become distant, very distant. The dark landscape stretched far below like a shadowy sea. The fires that once towered above him now looked no larger than scattered embers. The souls below had become tiny figures, barely visible in the darkness. A laugh escaped him. It was sudden and genuine. He had never climbed so far, never escaped so much, never felt so close to freedom. "I did it," he said quietly. Not completely, not yet, but he had come farther than he ever imagined possible. The thought filled him with pride. At first, the feeling seemed harmless, natural even. After all, he was the one making the climb. He was the one enduring the pain. No one else had carried him this far. No one else had done the work for him. The thought lingered in his mind as he looked upward once more. The golden light appeared brighter now, warmer, more inviting. The end of his journey could not be far away. Encouraged, Kandata resumed climbing. The thread swayed gently beneath his weight, yet it never threatened to break. Hand over hand, he moved closer to the light, closer to salvation, closer to everything he had dreamed about during his years of suffering. Then something caught his eye. Movement below. At first, he ignored it. The darkness often played tricks on the senses. But when he noticed it again, he paused. There was definitely something there. A shadow moving along the thread. Kandata frowned. He looked more carefully. Then he saw another, and another, and another. The farther he looked, the more shapes appeared. A chill ran through him. The figures were climbing. They were using the same thread, the same path, the same opportunity. Dozens of souls clung to the silk below him, perhaps even hundreds. Some climbed slowly, others desperately. All of them were following the thread upward, following him. For a long moment, Kandata simply stared. His excitement faded. His smile disappeared. The light above still shone. The thread still held. Yet something had changed. A new feeling had begun to take shape inside him. At first, it was little more than unease, a faint discomfort he could not quite explain. But as he looked at the endless line of souls climbing beneath him, That feeling slowly began to grow, and before long, it would become something far more dangerous than anything he had left behind in hell. Chapter 4. The Breaking of the Thread. Kandata stared at the figures below. For several moments he remained completely still, one arm wrapped tightly around the spider's thread. The souls continued climbing, slowly, steadily, relentlessly. They emerged from the darkness, one after another, stretching downward into the depths of hell. Some looked exhausted. Some appeared frightened. Others climbed with the desperate determination of people who had nothing left to lose. And all of them were moving in the same direction. Toward the light, toward freedom, toward the very thing Kandata believed he had found for himself. A strange feeling settled in his chest. At first it was only surprise. He had assumed the thread was meant for him alone. After all, it had appeared directly before him. It had been his hands that reached for it first. His effort that had carried him this far. The possibility that others might share the same path had never crossed his mind. He looked upward. The golden light still glowed above him, closer now than ever before. Then he looked down again. The line of climbing souls seemed endless. And suddenly, a troubling thought entered his mind. The thread looked thin, very thin, far thinner than any rope, far thinner than any vine. How could something so delicate possibly support so many people? The question took hold immediately. What if it couldn't? Kandata felt his stomach tighten. He imagined the thread snapping. He imagined losing his grip. He imagined falling all the way back into the darkness below. Back to the suffering. Back to the despair. Back to the endless punishment he had fought so hard to escape. The image filled him with fear. "No," he whispered. His fingers tightened around the thread. "No." The thought refused to leave. The more he stared at the climbers below, the more frightened he became. Every soul seemed like additional weight. Every movement seemed like a threat. Every hand reaching upward felt like a danger to his future. Soon, fear began to change. Fear often does. Left alone long enough, it becomes something else. In Kandata's case, it became resentment. Why should they be here? Why should they share this opportunity? He was the one who had found the thread. He was the one who had climbed this far. He was the one who had suffered and struggled. A voice deep inside him whispered, "You earned this." The thought felt reasonable, comforting even. And once it appeared, other thoughts quickly followed. If they keep climbing, the thread might break. If the thread breaks, you'll lose everything. If you want to survive, you have to protect what's yours. Protect what's yours. The phrase echoed through his mind. He had lived by that principle his entire life. Protect what benefits you. Take what you can. Trust no one. Think of yourself first. Without realizing it, Kandata had begun thinking exactly as he always had. The years in hell had not erased those habits. They had only hidden them. Now they were returning. One by one, the climbers below continued upward. Closer, closer, closer. Panic spread through him. "Stop!" he shouted. His voice echoed through the darkness. Several souls below looked up. Their faces reflected surprise. Some looked hopeful. Others looked confused, yet none of them stopped climbing. Kandata's heart pounded harder. "Didn't you hear me?" he yelled. "Get off the thread." The climbers exchanged uncertain glances. Still they climbed. Fear gave way to anger. The anger rose quickly. Hot, sharp, overwhelmed. "This thread belongs to me," Kandata shouted. The words rang through the darkness. "It was sent for me." The clamors below remained silent. Their hands continued moving. Their eyes remained fixed on the light above, as if they had every right to be there, as if the thread belonged to them as well. Kandata could hardly believe it. The fear of losing salvation consumed him completely. There was no room left for gratitude, no room for compassion, no room for mercy. Only selfishness remained. The same selfishness that had guided him through life. The same selfishness that had led him into hell. "You fools!" he screamed. "If all of you climb at once, you'll break it." His voice cracked with desperation. "Get off!" No one obeyed. No one turned back. The line of souls continued upward. Panic overwhelmed him, and at last he shouted the words that had been building inside him from the moment he saw them. "This is my thread." The declaration echoed through the darkness. "Mine alone." The instant the final word left his lips, a soft sound reached his ears. Tiny, delicate, barely louder than a whisper, yet it froze the blood in his veins. Snap! Kandata's eyes widened. The thread had broken. Not below him, not under the weight of the countless souls. It had broken directly above him. The path to heaven vanished. The golden light suddenly seemed impossibly distant. For a brief moment, Kandata could do nothing but stare. The truth crashed over him all at once. The thread had been strong enough. The danger had never been the other climbers. The danger had been himself. Then his grip slipped, and he began to fall. The darkness rushed upward. The wind roared past him. The distant fires of hell grew larger and larger. Kandata screamed. He reached upward desperately, trying to grasp the broken thread, trying to reclaim the opportunity he had lost. But there was nothing there, nothing to hold, nothing to save him. Down he fell, past the souls who still clung to the thread, past the path that could have led him to freedom, past the hope that had been within his reach only moments before. The golden light above grew smaller, dimmer, farther away, until it disappeared entirely. And then Kandata vanished into the darkness of hell once more. Far above, beside the lotus pond, the Buddha watched in silence. The white lotus flowers swayed gently in the breeze. The water remained calm. The golden light of paradise continued to shine. Nothing had changed. The Buddha felt no anger toward Kandata, only understanding. A chance had been given. The path had been real. The thread had been strong enough. What failed was not the thread. What failed was the heart holding it. And so the lesson remained. A single act of mercy had opened the door to salvation. A single act of selfishness had closed it. Ending. More than a century after it was written, the spider's thread continues to resonate because its lesson remains timeless. Most people do not face a thread hanging between heaven and hell, but everyone faces moments of fear, moments when they must choose between selfishness and compassion, between keeping everything for themselves and recognizing others beside them. Kandata came closer to salvation than he ever imagined possible. Yet in the end, he lost it for the same reason he had lost everything else. He could not see beyond himself. And sometimes the greatest obstacle on the path to redemption is not the darkness around us, but the darkness we carry within.